I think my April Fools may have offended some people. Hello, this is Samsa again from GamingOnLinux.com, and today I'm going to talk to you about Undertale, this time for reals. Undertale is an indie RPG, sort of a thing, by Toby Fox, where you play as a human who has fallen down into the underground kingdom of monsters, and obviously you need to get out. Your options? Violence or friendliness. The game is priced at €10, $10 or £7 for those interested in pricing. The reason why I'm taking a look at Undertale now, instead of, when the hype train, kinda was at its peak, is because I actually played through this game on a live stream, well, multiple live streams, because it was sort of a live stream project of ours after we played through Project Brutality, and I got gifted this game for me to, play through it, and I did. And that's why I'm actually, taking a look at it now and presenting my thoughts, because the game did make me think quite a bit. Anyway, let's start with the basics. Let's go over the sort of central gameplay mechanics here. So the central piece in the Undertale gameplay is the quite unique combat system. Even though the game sort of looks like an RPG at first, like a JRPG, the combat is something that hasn't been done before, at least as far as I know. So the combat system combines a sort of a traditional-ish turn-based JRPG combat system and bullet hell dodging. And it's exactly as crazy as it sounds. You also have two ways of approaching combat. So you can either fight or you can act. And fighting is the violent option, so if you want to, hurt and kill monsters, you can fight them, and that basically means that you need to time your attack, and the weapon you're currently using affects the damage you'll do. Basically, it's a fairly regular traditional RPG kind of thing where you do more damage the higher your LV is and the better weapon you have, and the better you time your attack. However, if you want to go the non-violent route, you instead of attacking the monsters, you instead do various kinds of other things. You talk to them, you might hug them, you might tell jokes, and you basically need to do a little bit of psychology, a little bit of trial and error, because different monsters react in different ways to different things. So you need to do sort of the right things in the right order. Sometimes it might require a little bit of guesswork. Sometimes it's fairly self-explanatory. The game does give you some hints here and there how you should react to certain monsters, but sometimes you end up guessing. But that way, you eventually, if you play your cards right, you make the monsters not want to fight you, and then you can spare them, and that way you can avoid all the killing. When the monsters have a turn, the game instead turns into a bullet hell dodging thing, where you have to avoid the various kinds of projectiles, beams and whatnot that the different monsters throw at you, and if you end up running into some of those projectiles, you take damage. So it's a fairly interesting way of combining turn-based combat, if you can call it that, and real-time bullet hell nonsense. Now, to some people, this combat system might be really cool, they might really like it, but in my case, I'm really bad at bullet hell games. I just don't have the brains and reflexes to really survive the bullet hell experience. So as far as I'm concerned, it was pretty much just a frustration. And it did make me really angry at times. I don't think I've ever been this angry with a video game before. During one of the live streams, I was dead silent for like 30 minutes just because I was too angry to say anything. And I think that says something about Undertale. However, it's the writing that kind of changed the experience for me. Initially, when I approached the game, it didn't seem all that exciting. It was basically throwing joke after joke, It didn't take itself too seriously, and I had also spoiled some of the areas for me earlier before I started playing the game, so I wasn't all that into it at first. But towards the end, it did pick up more complexity. There is actually a surprising amount of depth to the characters and the story. So towards the end, it actually got really interesting. I actually did eventually get absorbed into the story of Undertale. Sadly, I cannot talk too much about the story to, avoid spoiling it, but I can say that it is actually pretty damn deep. It goes well beyond what you initially expect. Even though it has its serious moments, like very serious moments, it also has some of those more light-hearted moments where it's basically just joking, trying to make you chuckle, and it did make me chuckle. It sometimes manages to be funny. It also seems to be really self-aware, sometimes to a creepy level. It does break the fourth wall at times. Sometimes just absolutely random stuff happens. It's if you haven't seen what happens, you really might not be able to predict what is going to happen. So the way I went about playing the game was I did the pacifist route. I decided that I would embrace the friendliness rather than the violence, and that's because it was actually recommended to me by the stream chat when I played it. And I did play it as a pacifist. I got the true pacifist ending, which means that I basically befriended everyone and I didn't kill anyone. And I do have to say that the story, like particularly the pacifist ending, it was actually pretty strong stuff. And it doesn't happen too often that a game makes me cry, but Undertale did manage to do exactly that. And that's not a small feat, I would say. There's also a degree of replayability, because you have, like I said, multiple endings. You have if you decide to kill everyone, you get the genocide ending. If you decide to spare everyone and be friends with everyone, you get the pacifist ending. And if you do something in between, you get the neutral ending, and I think there are a couple of slightly sillier endings, if you want to call them that. But in my case, I wasn't interested in playing much after I got the pacifist ending. I decided to check what the genocide ending is like on YouTube after I played through and got the pacifist ending. And I really don't think I have the skills for the genocide run, and I probably don't even have the, I don't think I am capable of that on an emotional level anymore, because I feel like I would probably feel like absolute garbage if I decided to go and, kill everyone now that I've gotten invested in these characters. And I think 11 hours of Undertale was plenty of me, and that's how long it took me to get to the ending. On technical side, if we ignore the story and, all that stuff for a moment, no bugs, no crashes, except the intentional ones. Sometimes the game does use crashing as a sort of a method of storytelling. It does intentionally crash a couple of times. The performance, no issues there, obviously. It's a 2D top-down RPG thing. It's capped at 30 FPS, so it manages to, keep to that. And obviously 30 FPS in this game, not an issue. It could be better if it was 60, but, it doesn't cause any problems. One thing I do have some complaints about is the keyboard controls. They are a little bit unusual. So if you want to play this game, it's probably best played with a gamepad instead of a keyboard. Let's talk about the sound stuff for a moment. Obviously, Undertale has fantastic music. I do highly recommend that even if you don't like Undertale, you go and listen to the soundtrack, because it's actually pretty damn amazing. So, can I recommend Undertale? This is a bit of a difficult thing, actually. Like I mentioned, I didn't enjoy the combat, and that's actually a fairly big part of the game. Like, all of the difficulty on Undertale, pretty much. So there are a couple of puzzles, but the puzzles aren't, that difficult. But the majority of the actual difficulty and the actual, the thing that makes it a game is the combat. And I didn't like it a whole lot. It was every time the game threw one of those semi-random monster encounters at you, I felt like it was just a waste of my time. And even when I played, when I fought the bosses, it was basically just a chore, I would say. So, on a gameplay side, I don't think I would really recommend it. However, it's an absolute emotional roller coaster ride. My Undertale experience went from blistering rage to true sadness. And like I mentioned, it's a game that managed to move me so much that I actually cried. Not like a whole lot. It was just a couple of tears here and there, but they were true tears of sadness, so there's that. So, my opinion on this is, if you like bullet hell games, and you want to go on this absolutely emotional roller coaster ride, like I mentioned, then I think I would recommend Undertale. It was an amazing experience, and the last couple of hours of the game were just... I was glued to it. During the last Undertale livestream, I played for a total of 6 hours, 4 of which were Undertale. 2 hours were just random games. So, maybe that I think that says something about, how absorbed I got into the game, because usually I only stream for 2 or 3 hours. That day I decided to stream for 6. So, I really got into Undertale, and I've been trying to deal with the emotions and the thoughts I have on Undertale for like a week. It's been quite something, I would say. And even if you don't feel like Undertale is your cup of tea, I understand if it isn't. Even for me, it took hours to get into the game properly. It was hours of mediocre experience. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of fun, there were a couple of chuckles here and there, but I only really got into the game and really started enjoying the game during those last couple of hours. So, if you don't think Undertale is for you, then I recommend that you still experience it in some other way. Maybe you shouldn't pick up the game and, play it for yourself. Maybe you should play it with a friend. Or maybe you should watch it on YouTube, or maybe you should watch some guy on Twitch do it. Something like that. I think that's a fairly valid way of experiencing a game. And I understand that it's a game you're supposed to play yourself. And it's a really weird thing for me to recommend you to instead go watch someone else play it. That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? But I still think that even if this is not really a game for you, I still think that you should at least try to experience it. Because it was, like I said, it was a really strong gaming experience for me. Maybe not because of the gameplay, but more so due to the story. And as a final note, if you do end up getting the game, I recommend you stay determined and go for the true pacifist path first, and if you want to, go genocide later. There is a reason for this. Sadly, I cannot tell what that reason is, but if you do end up playing the game, genocide later. True pacifist first, because, it's important. Just go for the true pacifist path first. Anyway, these are my rambly thoughts on Undertale. It's pretty difficult game to recommend in certain ways because, it's what it is. But I do have to say that I'm really glad I ended up playing Undertale, nonetheless, even though it was sometimes an exercise in frustration, I would say. Anyway, hopefully you got something out of this video, and I will see you guys in future videos and live streams. So see you guys then.